Not The Footy Show.
Yeah, I was pretty proud of the boys tonight. Yeah, look, I don't know if we deserved that result, but that's footy. That's the way it goes. Got a lot of disappointed players in the dressing sheds. Actually, they're shattered because you could see that they really wanted that.
We're in a prelim. That's where we're at. Against the reigning premiers. I mean, where else would you rather be?
Be the ball.
G'day everybody, welcome to episode 245 of Not The Footy Show. We have another podcast. I'm Warrick Nicolson, that's Robb Cox, or, straight off the bat, it's Bob the Builder. He's been, excavating his backyard from what I understand for the last week or so. So Roberto, how you feeling, mate? You got the sore hands, sore back?
Mate, lockdown projects, I can't wait for lockdown to end, mostly so I don't have to do any more projects.
I think I say so you don't do any more podcasts. I thought that was the words that were about to emanate from your mouth. We've got to start with obviously the finals. They've been played out over the weekend. We're recording this on Sunday night. Friday night, Manly 42-6 over East, one-way traffic, pretty much. And then last night, Penrith 8, Parramatta 6. And we see the Eels and the Roosters head out of the finals. The big talking point, though, Coxsmith, is the interchanges for the Panthers towards the end of the game. It sort of blew up last night on Twitter. The NRL physio put out a bit of an explanation, and it's something that, full disclosure, everybody, both Rob and I weren't really aware of. Apparently, you can store some free interchanges. Did you know this, Coxsmith? I know we chatted about last night, but for the benefit of our listeners, did you know you could store some free interchanges?
Mate. Not at all. I didn't know. I was of the understanding that if a player gets injured or not, but if a player fouls another player, then the player that was fouled upon is available to have a free interchange. I didn't know anything about this.
On report, has to go on report.
If it goes on report. Now it seems from what we're understanding now is that if any player goes on report for a foul on another player, then the team that was fouled upon gets to save that interchange to use whenever they like. I'm not sure that's the way that the rule was, or the reason why the rule was written that way. It sounds to me like there's a little bit of a bending of the rules here.
Well,
and I'm not saying just Penrith.
NRL coaches do that. NRL coaches wouldn't do that, Coxsmith, surely.
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's not just Penrith. It must be all of them that are doing it. So from what I'm hearing, there were 7 players put on report last night.
It's a big number.
Right?
The numbers from the NRL physio, and look, he went to great detail of how he interpreted this, and because of the situation with people wanting to know what his views are on injuries and the rest of it, he's obviously done the research. So this is the tweet that got my attention. He said, for the Mitch Kenny free interchange, and we've noticed it as it happened. He got his foot stepped on, stayed down in the background, Parramatta on the attack. The trainer, which I think is the head physio, Green, I think his last name is. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that's who it is. He does all their injury videos, calls out the referee, says, no, he's injured. He's got, we've got to stop the play, stop the play, stop the play. They stop the play. Parramatta's momentum stopped. They evaluate that Kenny's got an injury. And as he's getting pulled off, you see Tavita Pangai Jr. come up with a free interchange card. And you're going, surely we're not going to see another one of these mysterious HIAs when it's convenient, enacted by trainers on directions from coaches, which we all know is happening. Even Gus tweeted about it tonight. He knows it's happening, and he's now in charge of a club. So it's interesting to see if the Bulldogs ever do that again. But the interchange, apparently, the reason it's free, and as you said, is that they got a second free interchange when Nicolson got put on report for a pretty bad high tackle right in front of the post a while beforehand. It was one of those times where Penrith didn't take a shot at goal. So what the NRL physio is saying is that they had 2 regular interchanges left anyway at that stage because of all the reports that you mentioned that have been on. So they would have used 6 free interchanges by that stage because of the 3 on-report incidents from the Eels. The kicker in all of this, Coxsmith, is that NRL physio also then released a tweet at 10:25 last night to suggest that under his count, because of foul play and HIAs, Penrith had made a total of 15 changes during the game. What's the actual official amount we're allowed, Coxsmith? Do you remember?
8.
Apparently it's 8. So they had basically twice as many as you're allowed.
Yeah, it's a little bit ridiculous. I mean, I think if a player's not hurt when another player is put on report, then it's play on. I mean, we've seen over the years of completely fine, healthy players running off the field because someone else got put on report. We've seen it a lot. We've seen it. I mean, we've
amplified this year. Obviously, the rule has been well and truly what's the word? It's been abused this year because of that. NRL's decided that no changes required because you mentioned the Munster one, which was one of the first ones we saw at the start of the year, and everyone went, "Whoa,
he was off
whoa,
for 30 seconds.
What are we doing here?" And he looked like he should have been actually. That one, for a call, he looked like he'd been concussed, but apparently he came back. So the NRL's had a chance to step in and try and stamp this out, and yet we get to one of the biggest games of the year, and Penrith have 15 interchanges in one match. It's just
there's something that needs to be done about that because I think what it does is it gives the referees too much power to influence a game. If the team is going to do that, if the team's going to save them up and then use them at the end,
when you need to play stop.
It puts too much pressure on the referees, I think.
Yep.
So, look, my other thing about the Mitch Kenny thing, mate, look, I'm old enough to remember when play used to play on, unless the player was in a position that would be dangerous to him or another player. Now, Mitch Kenny was behind the play, behind the direction of play. And it's not Parramatta's fault that he can't get up. Nothing was a foul on him. There was no foul on him. And Mitch Kenny, yes, he needed to leave the field, but Penrith should have got him off the field under their own steam. He was in no way going to be hurt by the way the direction the play was going. And for that matter, if Penrith had have intercepted, then the referee could have blown a halt to play if it went anywhere near him. I don't understand why we're stopping the game to run back 20 metres to get a player off the field. He wasn't knocked out cold. He didn't have a big dislocated hip or a punctured lung or anything like that. In fact, the trainer yelled out, "Stop the play," from the sideline. He hadn't even run on to see if Kenny was okay.
He'd taken the call from old Ivan, though, I'm sure.
Well, Ivan would have seen a player down and said, "Stop the game."
Yep.
And
look, Parramatta aren't blameless in this. Let's go back to Fergo on the crusher earlier in the game. I mean, and the amount of times I've seen a player on any team, but Parramatta, I've noticed it a few times, who mysteriously gets injured in the in goal when they've got to do a line dropout. It's amazing how many times that happens.
We've seen that a number of times.
We know Parramatta aren't saints in this. Penrith certainly aren't saints in this. All the teams aren't saints. Some just do it better than others. Some have got it down to an art form. And what Penrith had in their back pocket here, Coxsmith, is they had 3 interchanges akimbo, and they slowed the game down in the last 10 minutes when they needed a break. It's exactly the kind of thing that I find it hard to stomach when a week ago Ivan Cleary's going, we really need to stop coaches influencing the referees before the games. We really need to stop that. I think it's a really bad thing in the game. And then a week later, he's got this little thing up in his back pocket, and he's clearly doing it to influence the referees in the game. The only difference is that he didn't come out and say, "Hey, this shouldn't happen." This is why I can't take that on, let's feel sorry for Penrith. I found myself going for Parramatta towards the end of this game. And you know how much I dislike the Eels. I was going go Para. I had to go and wash my mouth out afterwards, but I just really didn't like how, and we'll get to the footy, I guess, but how Penrith played in here, because they interviewed Nathan Cleary before the match. And I don't know if you saw it. And he basically, it was on Channel 9 actually. And he said, last week we were probably a bit kick happy. I'll probably change it up a little bit this week and, try some things and ice our sets better, which is a favourite saying out there in Penrith. I think we agreed pretty much after 15 minutes of the game. Penrith kicked it even more than last time, didn't they? It was just a kick fest.
Yeah, look, I've got grave fears for Penrith's attack. I think we sent each other a bunch of texts last night during the game, and it feels to me like Penrith have played themselves out of form. Their attack looks clunky. It looks super predictable. It's like Penrith's attack hasn't evolved. We're not seeing anything new. I'll tell you, the last time I saw something new from them was a little bit of magic from Momorowski a few weeks ago and Crichton when they combined over on that right-hand side for a kick and a bit. Yeah, that was something new. But that was just a little bit of individual brilliance from an NRL player, and they've all got that in them, or most of them do, of something that they can whip out. Yep. But the shape, Penrith's shape, looked not there last night. There was nothing that happened last night that a total toddler like me couldn't see from the couch. I knew what was coming. They keep getting squeezed to the outside. The only trick that they've got, which now they've played 3 or 4 times, is that trick where Nathan doesn't get the ball from the back of the scrum and he goes around and creates the extra man. It's worked a couple of times. Don't think Bellamy won't be working on that this week. Bellamy knows what's happening before Penrith even know what they're doing. I got because as you know, I like Penrith.
I've liked Penrith for the most part for the last couple of years because of how they've played. They're not playing like that anymore. And I'll get to a point in a sec, but finish your thought.
Yeah, look, Luai looks totally ineffective. I don't know if he's still injured. I think Ivan's got it wrong with Momorowski and Crichton. Crichton needs to see the ball more. And on the wing, he ain't seen it. In fact, Momorowski last night passed the ball way too late and could have scored himself. But if you're going to pass it, mate, pass it.
Well, he doesn't pass at the best of times and then chooses to pass when he's over the line.
Crichton would have scored that try.
If he'd gone early. If he'd had the ball,
If he was in the centres and Momorowski's on the wing, Crichton scores that try. He's got a bit more pace. But I don't like what they're doing with that right-hand side. I don't particularly like what Luai's doing on the left-hand side. And I think it's showing across the park. It's, the inside balls back to Yo are predictable. There's at the moment, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I mean, Kickow was unfortunately injured last night, but there's no spearing of back rowers on an inside coming from out to in. We're not seeing Nathan being able to pick up anyone that's running a weird line.
No,
it's not happening. And my fear is that Melbourne are going to rip them apart next week. And, you said to me last night, how much did Melbourne win by next week? And I said 13 plus. Given what we saw last night against Parramatta, I mean, 8-6 against Parramatta. And I know Parramatta have improved, but geez, you'd think that the team that ran second and just out of it, ran second last year in the premiership and second in the minor premiership, you'd think they'd have a little bit more, gusto up their sleeve. And that's devolved is a word. They've got worse. Regress.
I got a theory.
Predictable.
Ivan's changing how they're playing because he thinks the defense is going to win the comp. I watched the post-match presser and he actually said, he goes, we've had to learn different ways of winning this year. I don't know, something about this Penrith team that you could get on board with for so long is they would play footy, they would use the edges. One of the great things that they did even against Parra the last time they played around 26 or 25 it was, they go through their hands to expose Parramatta's rushing edge wingers. They didn't go through their hands at all last night.
No.
They just seem to be in this zone of, we're just going to bash you through the middle and whatever Isaiah Yeo can do to create for Nathan on the right, and then potentially Luai when he's interested on the left, he's really gone backwards since Origin. I remember giving.
Let me ask you something.
Sorry, yeah.
Let me ask something. In the last 6 weeks, if Origin was on now, would Luai be the 6th? For
no chance.
Definitely not. We know who would be. It'd be Cody Walker.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Jack Whiten. Sorry, my bad.
It would not be Luai, and he is playing nothing like the Luai that we saw in the first 8-9 weeks of this competition.
The thing he showed at Origin was he just gave his good players ball. He really bought into that, and it was phenomenal to watch because he's a guy that can overplay his hand, which is one of his skills. But he also, knew his role in that Origin series, and he was great. Yes, he's not passing to Latrell and Tommy and those kind of players, but they're still pretty handy out there at Penrith, and it's worked for a long time. He's just gone into that almost where you can see that confidence / arrogance, whatever you want to call it, it's just teetering because it hasn't come off the way that he thinks it should be happening by now. He's still relatively inexperienced in terms of big games of footy. It's not just going to happen for him. And that was the thing that I watched in this game, and the amount of ball Penrith had. They were just getting to their kick. And that's what I mean about Ivan changing the style, is that they are just all about grinding down the other team. Yes, they're going to back their amazing defence we keep hearing about, which was good in the last 10 minutes, but didn't get really tested the rest of the match. I just don't think you can play like this when you get, the big team called Melbourne Storm next week. You can't do it. You'll beat Parramatta. You're not going to beat Melbourne.
Yeah. Melbourne have got other gears, and you're not going to stop. You're not going to keep Melbourne to 6 points. The biggest fear is they're going to have to score at least 18 against Melbourne. And given what we saw last night, and if Ivan has changed the way they're playing, then they're not scoring 18 points against Melbourne. Not with what we saw. Penrith for the last 2 years, up until the last 6 weeks or 4 weeks, have been a team that can score more points than you. Yeah, their defense is good, but they'll score more points than you. Now, why would you change a winning mentality? I mean, I don't understand it, and we're seeing that thing with Momorowski on the right, because Momorowski's more of a defensive style player and Crichton's more of an attacker, and he's keeping Crichton on the wing. I mean, last night Dylan Edwards was average. I would have put Crichton.
His numbers were good, and his numbers are always good, old Dylan. And we exchanged text on this, and I spoke to my flatmate today, and we watched the game independently, and we're just talking about the Edwards factor. You can get those runs on the wing. Just whack him out on the right wing. Get rid of Momorowski. Yeah. Bring Toto back if he's healthy. They missed him last night, but I don't think he, would have won or lost in the game in the way that game sort of unraveled or evolved, or whatever word you want to use. But Dylan Edwards can do that grunt work on the wing. He'll have his 20-odd hit-ups. It gets Crichton maybe to fullback. Just get him the ball, because one of the things about Dylan Edwards, and I reckon it's a bit of a myth. I don't think he's a great support player. I really don't. One of his strengths is he's great at taking multiple hit-ups, coming out of trouble. And it appears that he's always around the ball, but he's just there to get the numbers up. And one of the things that I think is a negative on that is that if you're doing the first hit-up, then you're doing the third or the fourth hit-up, you're not sniffing around the forwards on the rest of that set.
No.
You can't. Physically, you can't.
You're gassed.
And speaking of gas, Liam Martin has looked average for a couple of weeks. I don't understand why he's starting ahead of Kickout, but that might be injury related this coming week. I just go Crichton. He's still pulled a couple of plays out of his rear end the last couple of weeks that have gone get him in the game.
Yeah.
And the one thing about Edwards as well is he's exclusively right-hand side. He can't play on the left. I don't know if it's the game plan or just he can't pass right to left. I don't know, he could be left-handed. I don't know. But he's only ever involved on the middle or on the right. He never sweeps in on that left side like any other fullback generally can. And I think it weakens them, because it ends up being that if you have a situation like you have with Luai, who's been MIA for a month, that whole left edge, I mean, don't give me the game that Tyro scored 3 tries in back-to-back weeks. Look at who they played those couple of weeks. Seriously. There's the Tigers and an understrength Eels side. And don't pretend that was a insight into how it's going to come finals time. I just have real worries, particularly about that middle for Penrith. Mitch Kenny, who won't play anymore, apparently his foot's injury, but what's he doing playing lock, Coxsmith? Seriously.
I'm unsure why they're resting Appy. Does he need it? He doesn't. When he goes off, he doesn't look like he's gassed. I think he's an 80-minute player.
It's finals
time. Cameron Smith was an old man and played most of his career 80 minutes. Appy surely can play 80 minutes. So I don't know if you need to cover him. And if you do, like the way that they got their team set up, Luai could go to 9 and Burton goes to 6. They don't need a 9 on the bench. They really don't.
Yeah, if you needed to bring in someone else. But you're losing another forward. And they've really had a drop-off when Fisher Harris goes off, when Leota goes off. Isaiah Yeo was outstanding the other night. He really was the only real guy in the middle who looked like he made an impact. But I worry about Penrith's defence in the middle. I really do, against a quality side. Let's go to Parramatta. because they're gone.
Yeah.
Once again, out in the second week of the finals. There's a really telling comment from Brad Arthur in the post-match. And yes, he was upset about a few decisions, and fair enough.
Yeah, rightly so.
That's the way it is. But he did make a comment that I thought was really telling, and it's why I find Parramatta, I'm giving him another go for next year. He called out his players. It was a rap, but it was also a criticism. I don't know if you heard it.
Does this, it's another sort of second week finals exit, but does this one feel a bit different because you really turned up tonight?
Well, I can't ask any more from them tonight. So, maybe in the past we could have done better, but I don't know. I thought we played pretty well tonight. I thought they played pretty well too. It was a good game of football.
He basically said, that's the first time we've gone out in the second week, almost since I've been here, where we've gone out with our heads held high and we've had an absolute crack. And you can, if I can find it, I'll put it onto the podcast so you can hear exactly what he said. But that was basically the undercurrent of it was, this is the first time my team showed up in a game where they had to win. And they got knocked out, but they showed up for the whole time. Parramatta's defence was great, as bad as Penrith might have been in terms of going for their kick on, building pressure and that approach. Parramatta were desperate. They didn't get exposed on the edges like I thought they would. Their forward pack did a really good job. Junior Paulo was immense in the middle. Campbell Gillard was pretty good. But I got a couple of things that I just need to, after checking the stats. I don't like the stats themselves, but the minutes is always something I'll check out. How many minutes do you reckon Nathan Brown played last night?
Well, it's a stab in the dark. 40 minutes.
Under that, he played a grand total of 26 minutes. He had one stint and then he went off. So is he injured? But here's the kicker. Isaiah Papali'i played 35 minutes in the game.
Yeah.
He's been a dominant edge back rower all year. And since he's moved into the middle, I don't get it. Here's some other stats. Madison, 42 minutes in his return. Will Smith played 37 minutes. And to give you an indication of why that's stunning is that Ray Stone played 60. So they didn't exclusively swap at hooker.
No, they didn't.
Wouldn't you have your best players in there?
They didn't, but they should have, because unfortunately, Ray Stone was very good in defence last night, but he got pinged for one kind of pass along the ground that wasn't forward, but Klein saw it differently. It wasn't forward. There's no way in the world it was forward. It went, at very worst, it went, across the field, but I think it went back a little bit. So he's unlucky there. But look, the pass to Paulo was both their faults. It was a late pass.
You know what I blame? You saw my tweet, my text.
No,
that's a setup plays. It's setup plays. Inside you practice and you practice and you practice, and you've got a guy who's not a regular dummy half playing there. He's just following. Fatigue kicks in. What do? You go back to, there's a big guy. I'll pass it to him. That was never the play. And that's all Parramatta did in the last 10 minutes, was just try and bash over.
Paulo wasn't expecting it, though, and he needs to expect it. But Stone, if he's going to give it to him, needs to give it to him a beat earlier than that, because he thought he was through. He thought that I'm past him and then got it. So, look, Stone was good, but Will Smith should have been playing dummy half last night. I don't know where he was playing. He was like a middle forward kind of thing, but he doesn't need to be doing that. He needs to be at 9. Stone needs to go back to 13 and be a running forward. Look, a few notable mentions last night, mate, and you know that I don't give them out very often to him, but Mitchell Moses' kicks very much were nearly the difference between the two teams. His running game
certainly an impact in the first half. His kicking game was definitely a big impact.
Yeah. Well, there were no points scored in the second half, so Mitch stopped doing his kicks, and I'm not sure how much the wind was blowing last night.
They didn't have as much ball, though, to be fair. Penrith had that run of possession. They really didn't. Parramatta kept turning it over. So,
yeah, but I think Moses was good. Dylan Brown didn't really show up, unfortunately. Again,
he pulled off an amazing tackle on Cleary. Let's give him credit for that, and he's one of the best desperation cover defenders we've seen. But
you know what? If that ball goes clean to Cleary scores under the post. He had to slow down a little bit to,
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
And what about Gutho? What about Gutho?
I've got an issue with Gutho, mate. And I mean, it's not an issue. Here's the thing. I just saw one thing, and I saw it a couple of times earlier this year. the way he speaks to Mitchell Moses, I wouldn't want to play with him if I was Mitchell Moses. And I think it's going to grow because he told Mitchell Moses to shut the F up last night when Moses was about to have a blow up.
Do you reckon it was Moses or Fergo? I actually think it might have been Fergo. I actually saw it was towards the end of the game, wasn't it? There was a incident.
It was about 8 minutes to go or so.
Yeah. I saw exactly what he said, and my initial thought was Mitch Moses. I'll be perfectly honest. I thought it's Mitch Moses.
Yeah, I thought it was Moses.
But the camera panned back, and if you're listening and you know who it was, please let us know. But I saw Fergo in a long way and still yapping off as he turned as the camera pulled out. So
even if it is,
I expected it to be Moses.
Even if it is Fergo, leaders don't talk like that. Leaders don't talk like that. People that could you imagine Cameron Smith saying that to one of his players? No, because one of his players wouldn't go and say that. No one really owns the team, and I think that's Parramatta's only problem at the moment. There's no one that owns that team. You would think that it should be Moses' team, but he's probably still a bit young in the head for it. But I'll tell you one thing, mate. They did show up last night and they played for the coach, and that guy should be coaching next year.
I agree.
Brad Arthur should be the coach.
They desperately need Reid Marnie back. Absolutely
they
huge
do.
For them. I thought Gutho was all right. He definitely showed up in defence. My criticism of him on the edges, and you know what he's good at. When they get inside the 20, he's the sweep around the edge. Left edge is where he loves the most. But there's at least 2 or 3 occasions where they're in prime real estate, and you've got Stephen Crichton defending on one wing, and you've got Brenton Aiden, who we know cannot defend, on the other wing. And Gutho gets to the line as the second man feed, and he kicks the ball 2 or 3 times. Now, if you think about anything that Gutho is really good at, it's that pass that exposes the winger in those things. I don't know whether the pass was there too late, but he almost like he didn't back what has worked for him for so long that he kind of held it, then kicked it. And you're like, that's semi-final football. You have to produce those moments that you can do in round 5, in round 8, round 10 against, teams that aren't, up for it. But in those big games, and this is the thing that I tweeted the day before, how good are you, Mitch Moses? How good are you, King Gutho? And how good are you, Dylan Brown? Well, the answer is not quite good enough. That's just where they're at.
Yeah, they weren't good enough. But I mean, I'm not going to rest that all at the feet of Moses last night. Those other 2 blokes really should have stood up a little bit more as well. In mentioning Brent Naden, I thought he was one of Penrith's best last night.
Running the ball, I agree. He also came out with that big play on the kick down the edge that should have been about 3 sin bins against Penrith if you look at the replay.
But also his high ball. He looked safer under a high ball, and Edwards did it all night. Edwards let it. I couldn't believe what Edwards did. I was talking to my son when it happened. Yeah. I knew someone was going to score, and I said to my son, I said, "Watch what happens here. He loses sight of the ball, and then turns his back on the play because he thinks the ball's gone behind him." When I was playing or when I was coaching, the very first thing that a decent coach will tell you, if you lose sight of the ball and you know you're going to let it go, don't worry about the ball. Look at the defenders. Start at the attackers. Start worrying about where the guys are who probably could get the ball. Unless you see where the ball goes, you need to worry about the players that are running at you, because one of them is going to get it. And when he was looking around like a lost sheep, it was always going to be a try, no matter which way the ball bounced.
Would have you preferred him to have a crack at catching it? Because I would have. What's the worst that happens? You knock it on. Then you back your defence.
Absolutely, I would have. But I think what happened was that ball was floating around so much that he kind of lost where it was and where he was in accordance to where the posts were, and I think he just got lost. But what happened directly after that was what caused the try. He didn't turn into defender straight away. He was worried about the ball. But look, I think Naden was very good. Going back to Parramatta though, Papali'i should have been back on the edge. It's like what we're talking about with Ivan. If your team or if a player is good at something, don't try and change it. He's already very good at it. He was probably the best edge attacking back rower in the comp, and you put him into the middle. I mean,
let me give you another stat. Again, I'm not looking at the runs and the tackles. I don't care about those because stats are stats. But the minutes played. Sean Lane, 72 minutes. Marata Niokore 80 minutes. What happened at Parramatta at training or in the game? I not aware when the game's close enough, but what happened where Lane and Niokore jumped ahead of Madison and Papali? They're good players, but they're not those other two.
Marata Niokore was lucky to stay on the field last night.
Mate, he got 1 week for that.
Did he get 1 week? Well,
that's the old. Your team's been knocked out of the finals. We won't harshly penalise you, please.
When he got put on report for the second time, I thought he was gone for 10. Yeah. And generally they would. I think Klein had a shocker last night.
Yeah, he did. Sorry, Parramatta fans, we haven't mentioned that yet.
In the first 10 or 12 minutes, there was a challenge from both teams, and they both got the decisions from Klein got overturned. He continues to make these little mistakes, Ashley Klein. I think he's past it. I think he's past it. I think
he's not.
Yeah, and how they can have Grant Atkins sitting in the bunker, playing second fiddle to Klein, it's got to be.
I asked you this today. You think he might get replaced? I just can't see it. I just don't.
I think he will.
They'll do it. They love their systems, and he's a systems ref, old Kleiny.
I think Atkins will ref the Manly game next week, Manly and South. This is what I'm thinking. And I think Sutton will get the glory game because he's the glory boy. So he's going to get the glory game.
Jerry Suncorp Sutton. Indeed. Yeah. That's the final assumption of Parramatta and Penrith. That's Parramatta out the doors in the second week of the finals again. Penrith, who were facing straight sets out, and wouldn't that have been a turn up for the books if that had happened? Wow. And Ivan in the presser, he admitted the pressure was there and he felt it. But he also had a pretty good line, which is, at the end of the day, we're in a prelim. That's what you're aiming to be at this start of the season. Let's get to at least that stage of the year. Yes, they've got Melbourne, but not with much confidence. Look, after the break, we will talk about Manly's big win over East in the other semi-final, as we have whittled the teams down to 4 in 2021.
The top 4.
Not the Footy Show. I love the smell of the finals in the morning.
Okay, we're back. It's episode 245. Warrick, Nicolson and Robb the Builder. I think we went through it a little bit earlier on, but he's effectively ripping up half the backyard. Legally, of course. But it was a dodgy concrete plate you were telling me, wasn't it?
No, it was a raft of challenges were there, mate. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's a bit of plumbing that needed to be fixed, but whoever built our house put a concrete pad over the top of the plumbing junction. And the junction is basically where all the pipes come out of the house and then go into the main sewer line. And look, it's not a nice job, but something happened to our sewer line with the way that the earth moves over. Our house is 26 years old. One of the pipes had busted, and we needed to get it out. But to find where the junction was, I had to cut 2 concrete slabs. So a lot of jackhammering and cutting and digging about 1.7 meters down to get to our junction. And now since that happened, I had to do something about the concrete that I cut up, and it was time for the slabs that I cut up to go. So we've had about 10 tons of concrete that I've cut up into smaller pieces and put them into skip bins, and off they go. Very unexciting, mate. And
hey, mate, you're adding some culture to the show. That's what we're doing. I mean, you'll be on the block before we know it, won't you?
No, my tip to anyone out there thinking of buying a house is don't buy an apartment, because generally less maintenance, no digging, no lawns, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, fun. Well, the Eastern Suburbs Roosters have got some time to do some maintenance in the off season, and to be fair to them, they're probably one of the clubs that you look at the year and you go, you've earned a nice break, because they've been up for so long. Last year they went out in straight sets, but this year just getting to the finals was a win for them, albeit a pretty average competition. But they went out 42-6 to Manly on Friday night. Let's start with the Roosters before we get into the whole Manly element, because there is plenty to talk about with them. But the special mention, I think, goes to James Tedesco. He has been up for all that time. I can't think of him having 2 games bad in a row for like since he joined the Roosters. which is a fair,
Yeah.
it's a fair rap for a player. I mean, he doesn't need it from us, but that's the observation, is that he just doesn't play badly, and he
No.
did everything he could. Yes, the scoreline. This happened a couple of times to the Roosters this year, where you've actually come out of games where they've been beaten by 40 points and gone, they had a crack tonight. That's a pretty good sign as a club, especially when you haven't got, three-quarters or a third of your roster, most of those high-paid players, playing come the pointing end of the season. What do you take away from the Roosters, I guess on Friday night, but as a whole?
Yeah, look, again, I know that you get a bit annoyed when I start to feel sorry for Penrith, sorry for the Roosters. I feel sorry for the Roosters this year. I think that they weren't hard done by, because it's just the luck of the draw. But I think they overachieved. What you said there before about Tedesco, mate, Tedesco is your $1 million player for a reason. He's a guy that'll change a club. His work ethic and his willingness to compete until the death, and to carry his team through if he can and if he has to, are to be commended. The only good thing that's come out of this year for the Roosters, I think, is that they've gotten to blood a number of young players, which they'll get repaid in the next couple of years to come because of the way that they've brought those players through. Drew Hutchison played really good this year, and I didn't think he was that good a player. He's because he used to be a Saints player, and he got a bad injury at Saints and obviously went to the Roosters. But I think Sam Walker will be better next year. I think Drew Hutchison will be even better next year. Lockie Lamb.
Well, Drew Hutchison won't be in the starting halves next year because Luke Keary's coming back.
No, Luke Keary. But Hutchison's one of those players that could find himself in a 14 jersey, because I think he could play 6, 7, 13, or even a back row if you needed him to. So he's a big enough body. He's probably the biggest halfback in the competition. So I think the Roosters, they got walloped last night. They got walloped on Friday night.
Yeah.
They really did. Manly owned them. But I think they can hold their heads up high. A couple of weird things I thought with Robbo towards the end of the year, with Sam Walker playing him in very, very short minutes at weird timings. But I think Robbo's looking after the young bloke, and he's a small fella, and I think he's often waiting for the sting to go out of the game. And he played long minutes in the middle of the year when maybe the competition isn't as keen as it is in the finals. So I'd say that's just Robbo being protective and obviously looking for Sam Walker being a long-term halfback at the Roosters.
I just would have thought, and again, he's clearly a better rugby league mind than anybody on this podcast. Apologies to you, Rob. But you've got 2 games of finals football that you can blood him in, and you got nothing to lose as a club. Both games, effectively, the first one's he ended up having an impact and won the game for him, and the second one, I don't know. Lachlan Lamb has a crack, but he's not a playmaker. He's okay defensively, got a kicking game that's sort of solid. But the benefit I thought of Walker starting on Friday night and getting an elimination cutting edge against a really good side, education, if we want to call it, and you can go along those lines with Robbo, I thought was really a good opportunity, and they didn't take that. And when he got back into the game at the end of the match, the game's gone, and you could see that the confidence had evaporated on the bench in the last month. I don't know. Just I just would have liked, if I was a Roosters fan, to have seen him get more of an exposure in games like that. That's where I would have sat as a Roosters fan.
Yeah. Look, I see where you're coming from, but I also think that he got enough of a taste to want more of it next year. It won't be old news to him when they get there again next year, and he'll still have a bit of, the good nervous butterflies. I think. He got a big enough taste, and I think, the game was gone when he got on. He
got on within 6 minutes to go before half time, but I think it was 24-6 at that stage.
Yeah, the game was gone, really. Robbo knew that. He probably just put him on for a little bit of bit more experience and whatnot. And I get it. I understand it. I think the Roosters will be better for this year. They're going to be better next year for what happened this year.
Well,
as
the
long as
simple
they don't have
fact
the
is
same amount of injuries.
El Kiri's coming back. I mean, he was the best player in the comp at the first couple of rounds this year. He was. And you
Oh,
went,
yeah.
wow, what could he do this year with a full? Oh, then he got injured. You know, that's
What's the salary cap, mate? Is it 9 point something?
officially
Is
or
it 10?
including TPAs?
10 million, about 10 million, isn't it?
I don't know. I couldn't.
Well,
I couldn't tell.
they had $6 million worth of players sitting on the sideline last night. So that kind of tells you the amount of bad luck that the Roosters have had. And I know that there's not too many that feel sorry for them because they've had a good run in the last 10 years. But, you know.
Look, let's go to
they'll be
Manly
better
now,
together.
but we will come back and we'll round the show off with JMOZ retiring. But Manly, last week, they gave Melbourne a start, and the moment they gave Melbourne a start, it was over. Didn't happen this time. They got the start, and 18-0 pretty early on. And what I really liked about this from Manly was, well, two things. One was the game plan from Desmond, who, let's just be honest, his press conferences are an absolute farce. If he ever complains
I loved it.
If he ever complains about not getting enough said about Manly, which he never will because he loves the under the radar stuff, but he just tried to wrap it after about 90 seconds the other night and just
he ran it himself. It was his own press conference.
The hair,
I
how
loved
good
it.
was the hair? Just magic.
I love it. Yeah.
I love that someone had a theory about him was that he went there with the hair like that, so people would talk about the hair and not the seagulls and their chances of the comp. I like that. NRL conspiracies on Twitter. That was a good one. But what I really liked about what he game planned was one of the big downsides for the Roosters is when you lose that $6 million, as you say, you've got to put some bit part players into positions. Okay. The first try exposed Adam Kieran playing the centres. The second try exposed Ben Marshke and Satili Tupanua, who I don't think is a great lateral defender. I think he really gets exposed at times. And the third try was Tupanua getting absolutely schooled by DCE off the scrum. They were targeting surgical strikes at the weak points of the Roosters side, and it paid dirt. The pay dirt there was 18-0. And the game was done. Desmond, he saw what had been done to him the week before by Bellamy with Morgan Harper. And he talks about, we completed and all this, we held the ball, yeah. But you also, you found some areas to expose, and when DCE is getting room to move like he had the other night, for some reason the Roosters didn't try and pressure him. I don't know whether it was simply because of the role in the middle or not, but he had just carte blanche to do whatever he wanted. And then Turbo just comes in and says, yeah, I'll have a try here, have a try there. I was very impressed by how Manly went about it, given what had happened to them the week before.
Yeah, they bounced back very, very well. Obviously a very different opposition, but you're right. DCE had all the time in the world the other night, and it really showed on that try that you just mentioned off of the scrum, where he just beat the A defender. There wasn't just one A defender, by the way. He beat three of them. The three blokes ran from the side, and he just stepped off the left foot and went, see you later. When DCE's firing, you'll notice that Tommy does a bit more as well, because DCE gives him the room. But for DCE to do that, his forwards have to lay the platform, and it has to happen like that. It has to happen. The forwards go forward, give DCE space, who then gives Tommy space. So therefore, the way to stop Manly is to stop their forwards going forward.
Is to slow the game down.
Slow it right down.
Did.
Yeah, and that's
the job for South this week. That they can play the ball down. You slow down DCE, and therefore you slow down Tommy.
Yeah, look, I know you haven't asked me for my prediction yet on that game, but I'll tell you now.
We'll right at the end. Right at the end, we'll do that.
But I think South will be able to slow the game down a little bit more than what East did the other night. But look, Manly played the game they needed to play, and they played it to perfection.
Yep, absolutely.
They beat a wounded Warrior in the Roosters, but they did it clinically, and hats off to them, mate. I mean, what did they lose their first 5 games this year?
Was it? First 4, I think.
Okay. After four games, if I said to you they'll be in a preliminary final, no one would have believed it.
We
Could've
were
got a lot
all
of money on
thinking, are they going to cut the cord on Desmond? We were thinking it.
Mm.
They were
I
that
said
bad
it.
in the first month.
I think I might have said it on the podcast.
We shouldn't have recorded podcasts at that stage. We sound like idiots, but that's just generally the rule here on the show. It's a good comeback from Manly. It's the kind of win that displays everything that's good about them. And Ryan Girdler's been lambasted for disrespecting them. He's right. Think of some of the great teams in the past, and there are certain ways that you play, and if it works for you, happy days. The downside is you sometimes come up against teams where if you give them a sniff, they don't let you play that way anymore. That's what happened last week. Tommy wasn't shut down as much as Manly was shut out of that game by what Melbourne did in the play the ball. And that's the beauty of what a top four finish does for you, is that it gives you that second chance. Because I'm not saying that the Titans would have beat Manly if Manly were in fifth, but you can have that down game in that first week and you're out on your ear. I'm impressed by Manly. It's the kind of game that they need going into next week against Souths. And Desmond, he'll declare Wayne Bennett. He won't say a word about Wayne Bennett. He's not an idiot. He won't say anything. But Desmond won't. He won't take any plaudits this week. He'll just say, we'll go out there and complete, and we'll try and hold the ball and see what happens. That's all he'll do in the press this week. But I'll give him credit. I thought he did a really good job at using his best players and the way that Manly played to expose some real weaknesses on Eastern Suburbs. So 42-6, Manly over East, 8-6, Penrith over Parramatta. We get two prelim finals, which I'm happy with. As you said, it's the top four, even though right at the end of the year, Manly jumped into that fourth spot. And Parramatta really the team that seemed to drop out of that top four in the last sort of 6 weeks of the season. Friday night, it's Manly and Souths. Saturday afternoon, it's Melbourne and Penrith. We will give more of an in-depth look at those two games. We've got plenty from us tonight anyway, but midweek. But right now, where are you thinking Coxsmith in both matches?
Okay. The first game, it really intrigues me because they're kind of different teams and they don't play very much alike at all. But we saw a different Souths beat Penrith the other week.
Yeah, we did.
And I think if we see that Souths, I think then the Souths will win. If we see the Souths that we've seen for most of the year, I think Manly might pull their pants down.
You're thinking 32-30 or something like that?
No, I don't think it's going to be that high, mate. I think it's going to be more like 20 points to 18 or something like that.
If they don't play the style they played against Penrith, that's what I'm saying. It goes to the track meet.
Yeah. So look, South needs to do a Melbourne. They need to slow the play, the ball down. They need to shut out the amount of time that DCE's got, and which will shut down the amount of time that Tommy's got. That's the only way you're going to beat Manly at this stage, because they're kind of on a little bit of a roll. Every now and then a player like Morgan Harper will have a shocker, but I think they've got the game to beat South if South let them.
I think that's fair enough. I'm with you. I think South at the moment deserve favouritism, but I really don't mind who comes out of this game from a grand final spectacle point of view, because both these teams, you're not going to watch grand final day and go, they don't really deserve to be there, or I don't want to watch them play in a grand final. It's funny how this has actually ended up with a pretty handy prelim setup. As much as you'd say, we would love to see Melbourne and Penrith because they're the two best teams. I don't know. Part of me actually goes, if we've got Tommy and DCE or Reynolds and Walker and Cook, I don't mind watching either of those two teams in a grand final. So that's where we're at in that match. So both leaning South at this stage. The other one, the grand final, we should have had apparently. And I want to bring this up about old Gusman Gould. I'm calling him that now. I've got a theory with him. Don't get me wrong, this is his team that's taken Penrith to where they are the last couple of years. It's the team he built. It's a team he coached. I actually reckon that his devotion to how he thinks Penrith are the best team in the comp isn't for the benefit of listen to me and what I'm saying. Okay, I've got a theory that it's all about the Penrith players hearing him, backing them. I think that's purely what it is.
I'd agree.
It's not listen to me as the pundit. It's players. If you're listening, I believe in you. Come on, boys.
Yeah.
And I actually go take the hat off to him because he didn't look great after the first week of the finals. He's been very bullish about, he thought they played really well the other night. We disagreed, thought they played poorly, but he is backing his boys and they get a date with Melbourne. And where are we right now?
Again, it'll come down to how it's played, mate. And if Penrith persist with this defence-oriented game, Melbourne will beat them by 13 plus. I've got no doubt. This isn't the game that Penrith should be playing. Obviously, the defence has to be good. We get that, But if they're not going to have their attacking flair, if it's going to be, Momorowski rather than Crichton style play, you're not going to beat Melbourne because you won't score 18 points. If you can't put 18 points on Parramatta, I don't think you're going to put 18 points on, and you have to score 18 points.
Well,
Melbourne.
Yeah, keep going.
To beat Melbourne, you've got to be able to score 3 converted tries. If you can't,
the stat that I go with Penrith, and this is why I just don't understand why they've completely shifted away from attacking at will or attacking at all costs, which is what I would say has been their game plan for 2 years. How many points has Penrith scored in the second half of both semi-finals?
Probably none, or maybe
in fact 0.
Yeah.
Are you even remotely optimistic that if they're down by 6 to 8 points in the second half of a game against Melbourne, they're going to score twice? No.
Mate, I said to you last night in a text message, I think they're cooked. The way that they're playing and that devolving of their attack, and almost looks like they're just dumbed everything down to, 1 or 2 passes, and they're not willing to push any more than that. To me, it just looks predictable, and Melbourne will eat that up. Melbourne will be looking at videotape probably tonight, or probably for the most part of today, saying, all right, this is the way they're playing. This is how they played in round, the rounds before State of Origin, and this is what they've done since. Let's have a look at that. Because here's the issue with Penrith that not many people are saying. I mean, someone stupidly said the other day, I think it might have been, no, I'm not going to say that, was one of the announcers said, it's okay. Penrith's premiership window is open for a few more years yet. Well, let me tell you who they're going to lose next year. Burton, Naden, Kickow, and 1 or 2 others.
Pangai Jr. is obviously going to Dogs.
Pangai will go. So that's 4 of the blokes that are playing first grade right now. Now I know Gus keeps saying there's more to come, but I can't imagine. Burton has been very, very good this year, to the point where I'm thinking if Luai can't stand up, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm getting at? If Luai isn't, it's not going to happen. But it'd be almost kind of a little ghost in the back of Ivan's head. If Luai aren't going to own that left-hand edge, I know someone who can.
Yeah.
So let's pretend for a moment Penrith play like they did up until about round 18 or whatever it was. I say Penrith can win the game. I'm not saying they will, but it gives them a lot better chance. But let's not fool ourselves and think that Melbourne don't have a say in the way that Penrith can play.
Precisely. That's the bit that I think Gus is conveniently overlooking in his reinforcing his messages to the players.
Because Melbourne, more than any other team in the competition, are the most influential team as far as how much they let you play.
Yeah.
Or they did it to Penrith last year in the grand final. They do it in big games. They're surgical like, mate. I say, and it hurts me to say it, but I say Melbourne will win, and I think they'll win well.
Yeah, I'm in agreement to the way you are. I go back to the grand final last year, and Penrith had a tough game against South the week before, but in the grand final, they didn't look terrible, Penrith. They just gave Melbourne too much of a start, and they didn't have enough to overcome that start. They're playing far worse football in attack now than they were this time last year or in the finals last year. And we're expected to sit there and go, yeah, they can. They're right where they want to be. They're not. And no. I just Toto not being there it would be massive. Clearly, they brought him back too early, or he said he was ready to. He shouldn't have come back. He played 2 meaningless games at the end of the season, and now he couldn't go, and he might not even go this week. I know that they talk about how quick he recovers, but he's a massive loss for them. And unless they sort out how they're going to play, and Luai, honestly, it's on him. Cleary, I think, is playing okay. They're very kick happy. Yeah. I think he's showing that he's following the instructions. But Luai, he's one of those guys that I don't think, when his confidence is sky high, which is always going to happen, you can't play on that emotion level that he's been playing on for 2 years. Like, we're the best, look at us, yeah, well, without having a dip. It's just going to happen. And unfortunately,
absolutely,
it's happening now. So what have you got, Jerome?
Look, the scariest stat, and I know you're not really a big stat man, but the scariest stat for me with the way that Penrith are playing is they haven't crossed the line for a try cleanly in 2 games. The 2 tries that they've scored,
right.
The 2 tries they've scored,
yeah,
2 tries they've scored have been off kicks. One was super lucky on a pad back. So yeah, I'm just not
Melbourne
liking
South
what I'm
grand
seeing.
final. I can get on board with that. Melbourne Manly. I can get on board with any combo, but
yeah,
I think Melbourne will go through. I really do.
Yeah.
JMOZ, as we finish. JMOZ.
Yep.
Could play. One of those ones that you just were always like, oh, there he is. He's a good player. He can finish. Good defensively.
An interesting thing about Josh Morris is he played for 4 clubs, as we know. He only played for Saints for 2 years. Did you know that?
It was very small. Yeah.
Sorry, it was 3 years. 2007 to 2009.
He played 2 seasons. 07, 08.
Or 2 seasons.
Then he went to the Dogs from 09 to 19 to 18. Rugby League Project. Yeah, that's one of the great websites, people.
So he played for the Bulldogs for 9 years. But here's something I don't know who was commentating the other night, and I wish that they had done this in the first game that both the Morris brothers were in. Whoever it was that was commentating the other night on Fox called him Joris.
What?
Joris. So I don't know, he just accidentally called him Joris. So how good would it have been to have Joris and Boris rather than JMOZ and BMOZ?
Oh, if only.
It flows better.
It
Joris
does.
and Boris. Yeah. Happened too
2
late.
grand finals. 2 grand finals for JMOZ. Sorry, Joris. In his time, 2012 and 2014, but he didn't taste a grand final victory. Joined the Roosters mid-season in 2020, looking for that title, and unfortunately it didn't happen. According to the Stats and Rugby League Project, he scored 20 tries for the Dragons in 46 games, 103 for the Bulldogs in 217 games, 15 in 25 for Cronulla, and 20 in 37 for the Roosters. Let me just double check they've added the last game. No, they haven't. So it'll be 1 extra match. So 326 first grade games for 158 tries. He won 175 of the 326 games he played. So about just under 54%. Played for Australia, played for New South Wales. I think he was in the New South Wales team that won the. He was in the team that. Where are we?
2014.
So he played the first game in 2014 of that series. He didn't play the clinching game, and then came back for game 3. But just really.
But Brett did. Brett played him.
I think Brett played all 3.
His brother Brett played in the clincher. Yeah.
Mate, just a very great
very
footballer.
Good player.
Brett didn't play in the clincher.
Oh, he didn't. Jeez, I thought I saw him.
The wingers were Daniel Tupu and Will Hopewade. There you go.
Okay. Stand to be corrected. Sorry,
I love him. One of those players that you just went, he's a good footy player. And he looked like he enjoyed himself as well, which is something that you don't always see in players. Like he was just, he always had that little, that boyish smile on his face, whether he scored a try or after matches. And I think he's going into brewing. So with PENRITH'S. Yeah. Is it Boris and Joris Brewing Co? Is that what it's called?
I don't think it's Boris and Joris, but they're definitely in a brewing company together. And good luck.
Cattleman's.
I mean,
Cattleman.
That's it.
Cattleman Brewery.
Cattleman's.
Yeah. So you're the one that drinks on this podcast, actually. So send them to Robb. if you've got anything.
I had a Canadian club last night. First drink that I've had, I think, in lockdown.
Wow.
I had one.
Because I bought you how long, is that not the same case that I bought you for your birthday, is it?
No, I mixed my own. I had a double shot and double shot with dry and a little slice of lime in there. But I believe it's the first drink I've had since July or June,
Wow.
whatever it was. Yeah.
Well, we start with some culture. We end with some culture. That's episode 245 of Not The Footy Show. I've been Warrick Nicolson. That's been Rob Cox, Rob the Builder, as you've seen with his avatar. We'll be back midweek to look a bit more closer at the two prelims. I guess there'll be some more news. The final point, apparently they're expanding the Dally M's to 2 nights, Coxsmith. What is doing there?
Why? Honestly, why? What for?
And all the awards that anyone cares about are all on the second night when the players, I don't even know, are they doing a black tie event? I think they might be for the ones that, so you're asking players that have been locked, I don't know. It just logistically, yeah, I know we've criticised it before. We know the process isn't fantastic. The position awards are hilarious because they judge them right at the end of the year with a 3-2-1. It's not even based on who polls votes during the year. So it's effectively, if you're thinking who's going to be the hooker and the second rowers, and just look at the last 6 weeks or since Origin, judge it on that because it's not going to be judged on the whole season. Right now, who's going to win though, in your view? Is it going to be Tommy? Are they going to get it wrong? Is it possible for them to get it wrong?
No, Tommy's going to win it. There's really no one else that can win it. I mean, Nathan Cleary's up there, I think, but I really think that Tommy has been the biggest difference to any team he's played in this year.
I just wish the system would completely reflect that because he has missed games, so that could hurt him in the end. I think Cody Walker's the other one that may, simply from the fact that South won so many games, he might also get close. And I did love him in the stats. Cody, that's episode 245. Rob Cox, Warrick Nicolson. Get us wherever we are. On places on social, and no ratings this week. Very disappointing, but the listenership is up, so clearly people are actually enjoying the fact that we're doing the shows. So I thank you for that, everybody, and we'll speak to you midweek as we hone in on the prelim finals for 2021. Take us out, Coxsmith.
Absolutely. Pepsi.
Not the Footy Show.
We're in a prelim. That's where we're at. Against the reigning premiers. I mean, where else would you rather be?
It's people's escape, it's people's relaxation, and we need to do everything in order to continue that great tradition of
Not the Footy Show.
Birthday boy.
Pepsi.